So I want to tell you just a little bit about me and why I care about this particular training. I'm Amber. I worked in corporate for a decade at Florida's Natural, and then I had kids, and I was like, oh, I could probably figure teaching out. It's so much different when you're a teacher. I'm preaching to the choir, but it was overwhelmingly hard to switch careers. I was early 30s when I switched, and there was so much that I needed to learn. On top of that, I was homeschooled until ninth grade, so I had never really ever been in an elementary school or a middle school. So there were lots of things that I did incorrectly, and there were lots of things that I learned. So my hope is to share any information that I got on the long journey with you all. And I'm sure you're doing better than me, because there's no way you could have done as poorly as I did when I first started. It was just wild. So a little bit about me. I have 2 small kids. I am doing research. I'm almost done with my doctorate at Florida State. So I'm applying what I've seen in the classroom to actual research, articles, all of the scholarly journals that sometimes are a great snooze or sometimes extremely enlightening. And a lot of the books, like the excerpts, the different things that have come my way. Also, what I think is really important is to not get wrapped up in all the trends that come our way. Sometimes it feels like whiplash. We have to try this. We have to do that. We have to do this magic potion and be the very, very best. So I like to rely on tried and true things that I see in patterns and things that teachers that have experience, that have more experience than I do, are applying, and it's working. So I was typing down like all the different things I've done within education, because I've almost been in it a decade in education, same as I was in corporate. So it started to feel like the Christmas song. I've used 14 different curriculums, taught at 8 different grade levels. I've asked to teach different grade levels. I wasn't like that bad where they just kept moving me, but I asked because I was so curious. I worked under 6 different principals and multiple superintendents, and you just get to see so many different things. Some great, some like, oh, I want to do that. And some I really learned what not to do. And that's also really valuable. Hopefully I have just a little bit to offer you. Something that really opened my eyes was I was reading a book called What Happened to You? Because when I got in the classroom, I was kind of like, what is wrong with these children? They're so crazy. I've never seen anything like it. And there's so many of them all at once, and I'm just overwhelmed. So this particular book by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey just opened my eyes. I recommend that to anybody, along with Ruby Payne's framework for understanding poverty. And I have a fan here in the back with Miss Seeley. So just the things that you'd never even think about that are going on behind the scenes. So that threw me on a quest to learn a lot more about the kids, because I obviously didn't have it figured out. They were acting wild, and I was just like, I can't even teach because I'm worried about figuring out this classroom. I don't know where to start. So I started researching, and it's taken me on quite a journey. And the school that I'm at right now, Box South, I feel like there's a lot of similarities within our charter system. The kids around this area are most often below the poverty line. They're pretty good sprinkling demographically. The boys usually act a little more wild than the girls. And we have kind of similar groupings of students. I feel like it's not just skewed one way or the other that I've seen too much. So it seemed like a good test unit to do my research in that could also apply to your school or your school or your school or the whole system in general. And that's the goal, is to make it applicable to you. I don't just want to talk about something that doesn't relate to you and waste your time. So the title of my research is a case study at my school that talks about how do teachers make sense of these crazy behaviors, or maybe once you get to know the kids, not so crazy behaviors. I would like your participation in this. Raise your hand or stand up or just wave at me if one of these applies to you. The question being, what's some of the things that keep you up at night as a new teacher? Raise your hand if it is the preparing the lessons part. That's for me. Yes. Or time management, making the most. I saw one of the sticky notes that somebody wrote. It's making the most out of that time allocation. Yes. Or getting your students to like make just a little learning gain or some sort of achievement. And you're just like, it's not budging. Interpreting the data, if you didn't come from the business world, that's overwhelming, all the sheets and Google Docs and this and that you have to do. Sometimes it's like, I don't even have time to do the lessons. How do I do the data part? And then parent phone calls. Is anyone having fun with that yet? So I forgot this part because I was really excited about the bingo winners, but I have a notes guide. It's not the Cornell fancy schmancy notes. It's a guide that when I put my slides in, I just asked my little friend AI, hey, can you please create a study guide for note taking? Because I do think it's nice to have something just to scaffold. So we're sort of in the area halfway down on the first page, and it should be in a stack on your table, the one that I said, please don't look at, don't peek at, and don't turn over, that one. And so I want to talk a little bit about what are the research questions and then bring it back to why do you care about my research? I want it to be applicable to you. This is very lengthy, but it talks about when I'm doing my research, what patterns am I finding? Where am I finding them? And how am I finding them? And we talked about the school setup for that. So some of the themes, and I'll dive into it a little bit more, are relational resilience, adaptive structure, and sense making through our helping them with the regulation part that in middle school is very, very wonky. And I'm sure it does start, and you all get to see a little bit of all of it. My goal is to help inform policies and procedures later, but also help each of our schools within our charter system with some of the research as I go through it. So my 2 research questions, and if you find them helpful, you can write them in a little bullet 3, were what behavioral challenges do educators face? And so I went through my school and I talked to some teachers that had very low discipline referrals, very high eye observation evaluations, and most of the teachers that I really researched have been recognized for that and have gotten Teacher of the Year or some sort of award or acknowledgement. So the research I'm basing it off of are the ones that have really been living their practice and showing the kids how to do it and the new teachers how to do it. The second question is, how do these really great teachers respond and adapt? Because I feel like each class or each year really changes a lot depending on what's going on in the world, especially after COVID or some sort of event, even hurricanes, different things. Like, how do we go from one year to the other and use some of these principles within our classroom? There's a couple other things just to throw in with the research too, is we are asked to not just teach. We're asked to mentor. We're asked to be their guidance counselor, their life coach, their doctor, their lawyer, their friend. Like, all of these random things are asked of us as educators. So how do we navigate and priority and we should be doing to help us in turn help these kids? So one of the questions is like, what's asked of us and what are we performing? How are we using or how are we exposed to some of the trauma-informed practices that sometimes appear in our research, our books, our teaching manuals? That book that I love, the What Happened to You, talks a lot about trauma-informed principles and practices. Also, some of the PBIS initiatives talk about that. And of course, going back to the frameworks like Maslow's hierarchy, there's also a need for interdisciplinary approaches that integrate all the different subject areas and a lot of the mental health components we need to still prioritize because it's important to care for that kid so they can then learn. We also, in this area, we've got an impact of poverty, instability, and community discourse sometimes. And then in 2005, like, what is the state of our areas like Wales? Is it's expected to grow, and how does that look, and what are we doing? So it's like the really, really big picture outside your classroom and outside our particular system. This graphic, raise your hand if any of these apply to you as a teacher. I will read them because they're real tiny. So if it applies to you, like your kid expects you to be blank, a cheerleader, an event planner, a decorator from your classroom, they'll tell you if you don't like it, a referee, a detective, a nurse, a coach, the janitor, a motivator, sometimes a drill sergeant, sometimes a parent, mom or dad, an entertainer, a negotiator, a storyteller, a friend. So we're all asked of, so many things. You're asked all the time. It's quite exhausting to teach. You know that. It's like you're performing all day long. So I threw in, and all this is on the drive, so I'm not going to read it to you, but on here it talks about like some of the different research locations that I pulled from. But how do we evolve as our role changes? What does the impact of all the stuff around us have on our teaching and on our philosophy and on our personal development? Because yes, we're teaching the kids, but as humans, most of us are still growing and learning. I try to learn something, a lifelong learner. And then really and truly, I feel like there's still quite a gap between, and that's the last bullet, theory and practice. Like when I got into my first classroom, I had the desk in a row, just like they had on the Christmas Story, because I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. And I had read all the books, like all of them. I was ready. And then I got there. And my, oh my, is reality different than what they tell you in the book? So the theory and the actual events, to me, big gap, got to build that bridge across it. And that is where Nicole was talking about, like learning from those other teachers right next door, down the hall, in other, same grade level, but at other schools. Oh my goodness. And you don't feel so alone and so isolated. It's like that whole adage, to name to tame, or whatever you want to say. It's like, I'm really struggling. Are you struggling too? Oh, not alone. Okay. That's really nice to know. Okay. I just thought it was me. We are going to spiral back some of the words from classroom stuff, but back to Maslow's hierarchy. And Nicole talked about it. And I know that Julie's going to talk about it in a little bit with PIS, but how many of you have seen this chart? And on the other hand, how many of you feel like it makes sense? So what questions do you have about this chart? Because I had a bunch. Anybody? I'll tell you my questions were, again, what is going on in these kids' life? Why are they acting so crazy? And a lot of times they are missing something really, really key, important. Has anyone read or heard of that? They didn't have a pencil poem. We had it like a couple of years ago at one of the opening ceremonies. It was like, we're fussing at this kid to do all these things, but this kid didn't even have a pencil to their name. How can we expect it? So we sort of have to evaluate and figure out, okay, where are they coming to us? How are they coming to us? And what gaps and voids do they have? Because what I found, and I'll go into it in a second, is behavior is really their cry or their way of communicating with us. Whether it be great behavior, they want to let you know they're doing really well and they love to learn, or crazy behavior, and it's just because it's a mirror of their dysregulation, maybe at home or in a different aspect of their life, or the class right before they get to yours and they're just real amped up. And here's where I'll tell new teachers it does get better, because as you're trying to figure out how to manage your classroom, how are we to ask you to also figure out what they're trying to tell you? It's like, how do I do all the things at one time and do them well? I don't know, but it does get easier every year. The first year is really, really, really hard. The second year is still hard, but you can almost learn like one new thing, like Celie was talking about. Don't have all of the new things at once. You can have a new thing and a familiar thing. So you don't have to learn it all at once, but I tell you, some of these things I will make suggestions to start tomorrow or when you get back from break. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the people that I researched. I found 6 really great educators at Buck South, and I sat with them and I asked them a laundry list of questions. I sat with them as they did their class. I recorded everything. I transcribed it. And I asked, again, my friend AI, like, what are these patterns? What's going on? I really like it for that. Like, synthesize this data and show me what I might be missing. So I want to show you some of the things that I saw. I touched on this earlier, but this has a little bit longer of a definition. Some of the things that I saw from these educators at my school are the trust and empathy that is developed as you as an educator start building relationships. And I don't mean prioritize a relationship over having good rules in your class. I'm saying that if a kid is displaying some sort of behavior, the first question you should be asking is not how do I punish them, but how do I help them not do this again? How do I meet that void in their life? So the relational resilience. The second part is the predictable yet flexible routines. Participation again. How many of you like to know what you're getting into before you do it? I don't like surprises at all. So some of the kids thrive. I keep hearing that all of them, but I'm going to say the majority of them thrive on those patterns, those clear expectations, the schedules, the structure, the way they come in, the way they have their bell work, the way they do their lesson, the way they, and I don't advise having them line up at the door. Most fights start that way, but the way they exit your classroom and go on their merry way. It's this emotional safety that they can anticipate, especially if you're offering them stability and that's not familiar to them. The next one is sense making and the self-regulation. We as educators can model the calmness and teach reflection through example. There are lots of times that I want to lose my you know what while I'm teaching my students, while I'm talking about discipline with them, while they're having a fit and I'm having to get called into a classroom to take them out, etc. But showing them how to not react in emotion and how to pause and have a normal conversation is something that we as educators are responsible to do. And it does help. Some of my most difficult and challenging, frustrating students are the first kid to ask me when I've had an off day, hey, are you okay? Is something wrong? Like, they're so good at reading you because they're watching you. They're trying to figure out how to maybe be like you, maybe not be like you, but those kids they melt my heart when they take a second and show me a little bit of sympathy or kindness because I don't have all good days. uh, so as you become well-seasoned educators, please don't quit. Please keep teaching. You will start to get kind of like a sense, like an intuition, a professional instinct. And I got to see that in action in the classes that I sat in, of just sort of like, know what's happening, you know how that plays out, and it's okay. That's where this teaching stuff does get easier because it's like muscle memory. It gets better. So here's a couple things that I saw. Behavioral disruptions. I was looking to see how some of these teachers reacted to those disruptions in the class. And most of the really amazing educators would always see that as not a defiance, but as the communication, like Julie said about the communication and behavior, and Miss Alexander said. So think about this, and a couple of my interviews alluded to this, where, okay, what are they trying to tell me? What is causing this behavior? Is it home instability, hunger? Is it right before lunch? Is it fatigue? I know I act pretty awful when I'm hungry, just I do. Is it underdeveloped self-regulation? Has anyone taught them how to appropriately react to certain things? Is it because they don't want to be embarrassed and they just, for whatever reason, got called on and all of a sudden they felt exposed and vulnerable? And one of my teachers, one of the elective teachers I was sitting in on, she referenced HALT, which, has anyone ever heard of the HALT acronym? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed. So it's HALT. She referenced that and I thought, oh, that is such a nice thing to sort of do a little checklist in your mind, have that like little care kit, whatever, where it's not going to create more fuss and heartache and everybody wants a snack now. Like, not like that, but just have that ready to go, kind of like proactive way to look at that. So some of the shared traits among these educators, and I'll tell you their names at the end, so don't worry, are patience. I'm working on that right now. I'm still not very patient. Humor, not sarcastic to where it's a deep cut to the heart, but a little bit of humor. And self-reflection, being like, ooh, I messed up today. Let me do better. Maybe apologizing. Hey, I spoke to you a little bit rude. I'm going to work on that. And being human. And empathy. Again, back to that behavior as a form of communication and a lot of preventative structures within the classroom. Lots of things to keep them from getting into trouble. So some things that you can apply, not tomorrow, when you get back from vacation. Some things are that I saw within my research within these classrooms consistently demonstrated were greet and check in by name. You're standing at the door. You are saying, hello, I'm so glad to see you. Welcome. Anyone already doing that pretty consistently, at least 80% of the time? Good, good, good. Awesome. Post clear expectations. In all of the highly structured classrooms that were just doing great, expectations were on the wall. It wasn't a laundry list of rules like you will not It was, here we expect. So does anyone have at least like 3 or 4 expectations posted in their room? And refer back to it of how it's applicable. Good. If not, ask a teacher who's doing it well. Ask them what they have posted. Does anybody here use a little bit of humor already? Or notice when some people are acting up, they get a little close and they're just like, so tell me about what you're working on. That human proximity, staying close, letting them know you're there. I think that works wonders. Also the mom eye or dad eye. I'm sorry, there's not just women. Build reflections and routines. Routines, again, lifesavers. Anyone have a couple routines that they love? Anyone have a routine they love so much they would like to share for a prize? Any other shares related to the systems and the way they're doing things? Okay. And then you just mentioned this, so good job on that. But ending the day restoring connection. So they might have come to you not super excited because the teacher just fussed at them, but you're restoring a connection with you and your classroom and providing that for them. So here's a couple quick takeaways so you don't have to read through a bunch of stuff. Your tone sets the climate. That was something consistent in all the teachers that I researched. The tone, the delivery, the volume, the inflection, the not yelling, the relationships, the structure. And one of my educators mentioned this, and I pulled it out because I thought it was just beautifully said, is calm is a curriculum. That's the structure in which he facilitates all of his lessons. And then empathy sustains endurance. You can be empathetic and ask them to keep coming back. You're with them in it. You're not just the dictator. Some things I would like to see as a result of our learning are making sure that we go back to that trauma-informed any sort of thing. So trauma-embedded professional development or new teacher training or just reading a book about trauma-informed practices is such a key element that helps me so much understand and learn and grow. Creating ongoing job-embedded professional learning, reflective collaboration, which we're doing here, and prioritizing our wellness too, because we are just giving and giving and giving, and we want to support you all. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like we are, but that is our goal, to support you all because it is hard. I remember being in your seat not that long ago. So a couple of questions that I want to ask you to take away are, what am I doing as an educator to build those relational rituals or structure? Where can I make it visible? Is there a spot that I can have in my class devoted to some of those routines? How do I model that calm, consistent demeanor when things are, hitting the fan? Like, how do I stay okay to show them it's okay? And then what little practices can I tweak so when I come back from my break, I can do just a little bit better? Has anyone ever heard of the 3% growth idea? Or it's just that little bit, a little tiny bit every day is going to help you achieve all the things you want to do without overwhelming you and making you go absolutely bonkers. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. I would like to study more within our other systems. So one day maybe coming to your school and looking at different levels and different campuses. But closing for this, and then I'll just send you with some stuff, is the relationships. You know that already, but keep on working on that. Relationships, get to know them, ask them about certain things that might impact them, their hopes and dreams and things they like. Think about somehow incorporating some sort of trauma response required, like personal learning. If you have a few minutes or on break want to pick up a book or something, and I've put some examples of research articles that you can look at the end if you just feel like reading something. And when we are supported, I feel like it makes us better, which gives right into the kids and makes the kids better, which is the end goal. That's why we're in it, is for those children. So references that have some hyperlinks or at least help you search, which is on the deck that is shared. And also the wonderful, fabulous teachers that I was sitting and looking at. And one just got Teacher of the Year at our school, Mr. Brooks. So we had Miss Brown, Mr. Brooks, Mr. DeLong, Mr. Kane, Miss Lawson, and our very own Nicole Seeley. You may make some noise for her because I love her. I sat in on these educators' classrooms because just being around them, I feel like I'm learning something from them. And I encourage you to maybe watch a few of their interviews. I talked to them because I was very, very curious about what are they doing, which prompted me to come sit with them. So I put some links to some of their interviews. I even have Miss Conrad's interview. Hers at the top, Miss Burrows, Miss Seeley's, Miss Alexander was here. I put a link to hers. And then our very own Miss Strom was in here in the audience, but I interviewed her. So another educator that's really rocking it. And then a couple more links to different information. So on your own time, if you wish, you can go look at it.